so many things, like how to love and how to lose and how to choose.
Well, hello, this is Linda Carbonell, and welcome to another edition of Walking Through Life. Today I have a very good friend of mine that is an ecstatic poet. I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but I'm sure he's going to explain it to us. I've read quite a bit of his poems and looked at his books and stuff, and he's a very interesting guy. So anyway, with further ado, I would like to introduce you all to Paul Goldman. Hi, Paul. How are you this morning?
Hi, Linda. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. You know, I listened to, you have some videos up on YouTube, kind of like a mixture of meditation music and poetry. And I just got to tell you, each one of those that I watched was like, wow, you know, because the music that flowed with it and the way that you told your poetry, it was like so touching. It's like I understood everything that you were talking about. And another thing, I know you were telling me about finding a place where you could do a spiritual awakening. And I want to start there, if I could, and talk a little bit about that and your experience with that, if that's okay.
Good. That's perfect. Thank you. And that's really, you really hit on the feel of what the poetry, at least as I see it, that comes through me. It originally rose from the meditation cushion, too. And I used to have to get up from meditating, go write the poem. Now, writing the poem is a meditative process. But you're absolutely right. I talk about in the yellowed pages in the archives are my poetry from when I was 13 and 14. And there was a lot of poetry and a lot of years that went through with that. There was always a spiritual thread of the poetry. But in 2009, really, as most people seek out something at a time of difficulty, our beautiful daughter, who's always wonderful, was having some difficulty then. So we went to this spiritual awakening class and kind of were looking at some of these things. And this class was really interesting. It was in Lawrence, Kansas, where actually is the home of University of Kansas. But there's a woman that was holding some spiritual awakening classes. And as we would learn in the class, the curriculum for the class, and then later a session where we asked questions, she channeled a guy named Bill, if that doesn't sound just out there. Mm-hmm. She channeled a guy named Bill that she knew when he was alive. He was kind of her spiritual mentor. So one of the first processes we had was an exercise that Bill recommended in automatic writing. Never had done automatic writing. So for folks that don't know about that, my limited understanding, it's basically you take what's not your dominant hand. So if I'm right-handed, I start writing with my eyes shut with my left hand, see what comes through. And that was the beginning of another deeper spiritual awakening and breakthrough for the poetry. I refer to myself as an ecstatic poet, as you mentioned, mm-hmm. And that really harkens back to the mystic poets, Rumi, Hafiz, Tikaram, and even throughout the thread of their writing, there's really the term being drunk on the beloved. So we actually talk about being ecstatic, being so much in bliss, as if we're literally touching the hem of the beloved. So that's where that began. And really from there, the poetry just quickly has taken off into a new direction. And it's a shock to my system now when I write the darker poems. And I will still write some of those commentaries on what's going on in the world. Yeah. But I try to focus in on the positive, the poems of light.
Yeah, and I think that's important too, is for me, it was more like I had to have the physical experience. So if I'm in a negative place, I had to take myself to a positive place. Like, if I'm behind my four walls and I'm feeling all this negativity, then I go out and I have a special place that I go to. It's a park. And I just sit there and enjoy the birds and the flowers and the squirrels and all of that. And one time when I did that, and I went down there and I just had so much negative stuff going around me that I embraced myself like this. And I said, how do I love myself? What do I do? It was just like the whole sky opened up, and it was like, if you heal your life, if you really work hard, you can have the life that you truly want. But wait, that's not all, because you can help others find theirs too. And it was just like, wow. And that was my spiritual awakening. I'm not kidding. It was like I saw this waterfall. I mean, this dark pond turned from dark to light, and it was great anyway. But that was my experience with spiritual awakening. So,
well, one of the things is that people look at what is awakening, is it being woke, or what all these other terms are. And for me, what I've found is it's in being mindful. It's being present in each moment.
yes.
If I'm getting stuck in the past, or what's going to happen in the future, or something not going my way because I've set myself up with expectations, then
Yeah.
the game's lost, if you will. So I need to keep as much as possible, and I'm human, so I go back there and I go forward. But if I can come back to this present moment, I'm in it. And that's where the poetry flows from me. It's just in the present moment.
And you know, I don't know if you find this, but while you're writing, is you build up, you're building up more and more and more joy for every word that you write. Is that something that works for you too, or?
It's an amazing process, Linda. It really is. So when I wrote poetry for years and years and years, typically, like most writers or poets, authors, I would write something. Now with poetry, I'd write it first, struggle to write it, maybe after months of drought of not writing, and then I'd write the darn thing, and I'd have to go, what's the poem called? I don't know, I just wrote it. I had to make up a title. Here's the flip, and I've talked to a few other writers and poets that have found writing this way, even at beginning of a chapter or be it a poem. I get the title, and I mean, I get it. It's a download delivered gift, gratefully received. I get the title. And the title comes, then I sit down and write the poem. And that is amazing. That's a whole different process of writing, because it's very much in the flow. In other words, I wrote a poem yesterday called Empty Nest. And I was going to post that to my author page on Facebook. And so I looked for a picture of an empty nest, found that, because I used some of those images then besides my own imagination. And the poem, Empty Nest, unfolded on the page.
Yeah. Oh, so do you have it? Can you read it to us?
I wasn't planning to, but I'd be happy to. Let's see if I find it.
Because you're on the spot there.
I have a drawer full of poetry over here. This is me reaching for the poem. I did have a couple others.
Oh,
there
yeah.
it is right here.
Oh, there you go.
So picture you're looking at an empty nest up in a tree. All right, this is called Empty Nest. I am both the nest and the bird, to be shown the way to empty myself and fly in a new direction. What I have birthed has by design figured it out, flown free of their own reckoning. I am here watching as even this belief in an empty nest vanishes before these eyes, no longer my own.
Wow. That was just so powerful. I mean, I just got that. I got that. You know, I really got that. And did you say you had another poem or two? And the thing that I want to talk about too is if you could read another poem. But I also want to talk about your books before your newest book that you've got, because we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So I want to talk about everything that you've got that people can go and find. You know, poems, books,
Right.
anything like that.
You can find my poems and my books, and we'll talk about that more, but at ecstaticpoet.com.
That's where they find
And
you.
So what happened? Say again?
I said that's where they can find you at ecstaticpoet.com. Yeah. Okay.
Right. And so in 2009, with that spiritual awakening, quickly I had amassed already another book. I'm gonna backtrack just a little bit from that because it didn't include it. But what I did was in 2009, which was kind of the culmination of the poetry I'd written at that time, I put out a little chat book. And people may not know the term. It means short book. It also means cheat book, because it's just a little bound, maybe 30-page book of poetry. But I put out a book. Oh my gosh, if I can remember the title of it now. Well, I didn't jot that down. I can't remember the title. It's 9 years ago. But it was a poem. It was a book of poems about Lewis. Lewis was a homeless guy. And someday there will be much more about that. But the whole book was about Lewis. 30 different poems about Lewis, this homeless guy that lives in my imagination. And so I put out that The Meek Shall Inherit the Earth. That was the title of the book. And so I had put that out early in 2009. And so really that was kind of the precursor then to writing the spiritual books. The interesting thing about Lewis was he fancied himself kind of a man of God. So he was a homeless guy there to show us the humility and the grace and the love. And people would not look at it. See that? I mean, that was amazing. Yeah. So like I said, always a spiritual thread. But by 6 months after that spiritual awakening class and that real spiritual awakening in my heart, for me, I had put together a collection of poems, and I decided the first thing, instead of a first collection of poetry besides the Lewis book, I went into the studio with a musician friend of mine named Tom Jacobs. Tom's a yoga and meditation instructor and an incredible musician, guitar player, and vocalist and singer. So we went into the recording studio, never having done this in my life, Linda, you understand. So we reserved the studio for 8 hours, and I brought, I think I brought 40 poems. And halfway through the recording session, Jeff, the sound engineer, said, "This is going so good, but you're going to have to cut out 10 poems."
Oh, no. Oh.
So this must be what musicians, like rock musicians, go through in the studio.
Yeah.
They get so productive, they find they can't include everything.
Yeah.
So I did what I usually do, besides panic, and there was some of that. I said, "Okay, what do you want me to do?" And as I asked the divine, as I would say. So threw out 10 poems. And you have to understand, in the studio, there was a glass wall in the sound book between me and my friend Tom. And I had the book of poems I was going to read, and he had the book of poems that I was going to read. And so I would start on one of the poems. He'd either nod to me or I'd nod to him, and he would start playing guitar, or I would start reading. And we were done with 30 beautiful poems. I had practiced a little bit with somebody that I knew who had a recording studio in their home. My delivery was God sent. I was, even now you'll hear in this interview, when I get excited, I talk fast. And in this, and I think you grabbed a video of that spoken word CD. Yeah. I think that may have been Wake Up, I think. Yeah. And it was amazing. Amazing how well I did.
Honestly, I really like that. But like I said, I looked at several of them. There was like 3 of them that I need to go back and look for more. If you got 30, I mean, I want to find them, you know, because the way that you say your poem and it connects with the music and everything, it's so beautiful. You know, it's coming from the beloved. You know that. You know it. You can tell. And that is your gift, Paul. That's your gift. And your poetry is your gift. And the way that you express yourself in your poems, in your books, in your YouTube videos or whatever. I really would like it if my audience would maybe be able to find out more about how to find you online. And you know, I know you said the one website, but can people can find you on Facebook and YouTube, right? Under Paul Goldman.
Right. Facebook, my author page is Wild Joy, the Ecstatic Poetry of Paul Goldman. So it's self-titled. Because the first CD, the spoken word CD I'm talking about, was entitled Wild Joy Released. I found out, much like a musician, to my own, dislike, I'm also on Spotify, the whole CD. I guess it's free. But go buy a copy. Don't just go to Spotify. But hey, because you can even listen to some of the tracks in CD Baby. But so after that CD came out, I took some of the poems from that CD and maybe added another 30 or 40 new poems, because again, they were starting to come pretty fast, almost daily. And I put out the book Wild Joy Ruminations. And Ruminations is a play on the poet Rumi.
So can you,
Jamal ad-Din Rumi.
and I want to know, you've said one poem for us, but can you give us another one?
I have one that you actually like too,
Okay.
that I did a video of on my author page. And this is called Becoming That Which Feeds the Universe.
I like that one.
In each breath, we no longer strive to discover the source of each inhalation and each exhalation. And simply returning to each breath and the next. It is through our own surrendering that we realize we are feeding the universe, so hungry for breath.
I mean, that really touched me, and I mean, that was the first one that I listened to. I saw the little video on Facebook, and I listened to it, and it was like, wow, I need to have him come on Walking Through Life, you know. I said, because it just spoke to me, just like all of your other poems and everything that you do. And you know, for me, Paul, I just really appreciate what you do for us by writing your poems and by getting your messages and by being able to make them make sense and really touch people. And that's a unique gift, and I know you've got that. And so you're on another book mission now, though. Could you tell the audience a little bit about the new book?
Well, let me jump back, and then we'll get to the new book too.
Okay.
So Wild Joy Released and Wild Joy Ruminations, the CD and then the book, were released in 2010. And then in 2011, I had what every writer, poet, author dreams of. I got a connection to present my work to a publisher, O Books, out of London, England. So I sent the book across the pond. And there's a beautiful story with this book. It was called Journey into Oneness.
Oh.
And I sent back a number of poems, not the whole book, but a number of poems. And I had a referral, which always helps. So, because otherwise it just goes in and it goes into the slush pile and nobody sees it maybe. And so actually I had the publisher look at it. And this was an old line spiritual book publisher out of England. And he wrote back, John Hunt is the publisher, John. So he wrote back and said, really, really like your poetry. I'm not sure what we can do with it. However, here's what he said, without further information. Now, number one, I'm a writer. So that's a challenge. That's a dare to me when I see that. And number two, I've got a long experience in sales too, so I don't have any problem selling myself. Well, I mean, the poetry speaks for itself. So somehow, by the beloved's gift, I wrote him back and I said, this is why this is going to happen. I've got a Twitter following. I've got a Facebook following. This is what's been happening with the work. This is what's going on. And wouldn't you know it, I got a book contract in 2011 for that book, Journey into Oneness. And I joked with you when we first talked, oh, I was off to the races. I became a famous poet and I retired. Well, the gift of poetry is a humble task. And so I've had success and I haven't had that success that has put me on Oprah's Super Soul Sunday, but that's on my vision board. So.
Well, you know, here in Vermont, even the governor calls me the Oprah of Vermont. He does.
There you go.
See? Oprah of Vermont. You got your Oprah.
You never know. So the writing kept flowing and I got involved in a special project in 2015. Now that first actual collection, Wild Joy Ruminations, I met a woman at a Unity conference out in San Diego. And I met her. She had a publishing company. It was kind of cooperative publishing, kind of like self-publishing, working with the author, but they do a lot of the design work, and it's a beautiful process. And so she did that first book for me, and it was really beautiful. So I went back to her with Upon Your Canvas in 2015. Now the play on words there, the title poem of that book comes from creating our own canvas. If our life was a blank canvas, how would we paint it? That kind of thing. And I literally got an artist that's here in town, a visionary abstract artist, to paint the cover for the book and also 7 color paintings for the book. So that's really unique. It includes both the paintings and the poetry.
And also,
So
I
that
saw.
book-
Oh, sorry, didn't mean to. I saw that on one of your videos. You was actually talking to her, and she was doing her canvas, and it was just you're reading the poem. She's doing her canvas, and it's like, wow, this is neat. And you could see all these wonderful colors that was coming out of her, and you guys had the connection of poems, poem artwork. And so I think that's great that we can co-create and collaborate together so that we can use each other's talents, really. Sharing.
The fun thing now is my wife, Dawn, has begun painting abstract paintings herself.
Yeah?
So one day we will, and there's some work. And so she's self-taught. So one day we'll do something together too.
That would be cool.
So now we're up to the fourth book. And that officially came out from a new small press called Calliope Club Press. What happened with that book, there was an election, as I recall, and we got the results in November of 2009. And that sent me into a downward spiral, not that we're going to get into politics. And I was given the gift of this next book, and my wife was a witness to this. I just sat at the computer like I imagined Van Gogh, going crazy, painting sunflowers because he was just, And so I wrote this book just without stopping. And
Wow.
Here's what was different for me. You go back before 2009, I had political commentary in the poetries. I had poems about how to fix society's ills and maybe use some wit, sardonic wit, maybe some sarcasm even. But these poems, I started out the book, Shades of Darkness, Open the Blinds. I started out with poems of light, about beauty, about love, about truth. The next poem was about darkness. And the people that populated these poems of darkness appeared to be people that voted somebody in office that a lot of us were not happy for. so I produced that little book, and that was just in the fall of last year, 2017. This is a little small book, again, a chat book of about 40 pages.
Mm-hmm.
One thing leads to another. I'm out at a bookstore that was having a book fair, and there was, I think, 3, 4, maybe 5 authors out there. We were there with their books talking to the public. And I met another author who had 5 books with a publisher out of New Jersey.
Mm.
So I said, Kevin, after we got talking, see, I'm a sponge out there. I look for opportunities. You have to.
Yeah.
So I asked Kevin, I said, who's your publisher? And maybe I could write them and let them know about my next project. Well, that kind of percolated. And then June of last year, so almost a year ago, June of 2017, I began to work part-time for Silent Unity Prayer Line. And I think a lot of people that are seeing the show will know who Unity is. Unity is a positive, affirmative prayer movement. And they call it positive Christianity, although it's non-denominational, even though they talk about Jesus. They have people of all faiths involved in the movement. But Charles and Myrtle Fillmore were active in that time in the late 1800s, early 1920s, 30s, where there was really this spiritual quest. There was a movement called Theosophy. One of the people, Mary Baker Eddy, became the foundation of the Christian Science movement. And so there are a lot of these new thought people. So Charles and Myrtle Fillmore both healed themselves through positive affirmative prayer. So I knew about them, and I've been familiar. And Unity Village, the world headquarters, is here outside of where I live in Lee Summit. So this is why I give you this kind of lengthy explanation. Immediately, I started writing poetry, and the book came through, this new book that I've got now coming May 2nd, called Silence Speaks.
And
I
was going to say, what's that about? And I hear you got an offer for our audience. Tell us a little bit. Just give a little taste, though, because if you're having an offer, they're going to want to know more. So tell us a little bit about the book. Give us what do you call it? Preview. A little preview.
So Silence Speaks came about really from silent prayer and silent unity. I wrote 9 poems. I sent it to the publisher, and they immediately accepted it.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing was, I only had 9 poems. I had to take the next week and actually write the rest of the book, and the book is now 102 pages.
No.
And so it's. I think I have a copy here. If you'd like to see that.
Oh,
see
yeah.
the book there?
Put it up a little bit higher. A little bit higher up over here.
A little higher?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Oh, there
Wow.
we go.
That's cool.
And so I'm excited about the book. You want me to tell them about the offer?
Yes, of
We
course
can do
we
that
want. We all want to know about the offer. What's the offer? And then you could, yeah, great. Tell us about the offer.
The offer is that if you go to my website, there's a join our list to get awakening messages and to find out what's going on more at ecstaticpoet.com. And we're going to draw over the next week. We're going to draw 3 names, and we'll send you an autographed copy of Silence Speaks.
Wow.
And all you have to do is join the list to get awakening messages. And we're going to draw 3 names. So if we get 30 or 300 or 3,000, you're going to have a chance.
Are they spiritual poems?
This is a whole this is a whole meditative group of poetry. And we've actually divided the book. I could have done a shorter book. We could have done a more concentrated. What we did was, and I say we, my publisher and also my wife and also my mom, I had them look at the manuscript and they said, well, this poem kind of takes me to a different place. And we came up with 3 sections: inside silence. So there, Linda, we're talking about that, going within, and then outside silence. Well, what in the heck do we mean by outside silence? That seems to be a contradiction. We're talking about what I was talking about, being mindful. So now we're taking this deep meditative state as a coping tool in the world. When we see what looks like chaos or negativities you're talking about.
Yeah.
The outside silence and poem teach us how to be in the world in a way of peace and humility and tranquility and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next section, the final section of the poem, is inside again. So,
I can't wait. I can't wait to read. I can't wait to read that book. I can't wait. And I encourage everybody to go to his website, Paul Goldman's website, ecstaticpoem.com. No, no. You tell me.
Poet.
Okay, ecstaticpoet.com. I'm so sorry. See? Yes. Perfect. Yeah. See, I've had a great time with you, Paul. I really have. And go ahead.
And on Amazon, it will be on there May 2nd. As of May 2nd, the Kindle's already on there, the Kindle copy.
Oh, good.
The paperback copy goes live on May 2nd.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
And can they find your other books on Amazon too?
They can. Everything that I've got is on Amazon.
There you go.
So.
Well, Paul, it's been wonderful to interview you today. I look forward to you coming back in a couple of weeks and letting us know what's next. You know, is there another book already? Have you written another book in 2 weeks now? We could have another raffle. Anyway, I really enjoyed it, and thank you so much for sharing.
I've got 5 books.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it, and I can't wait to have you come back and share some more. So anyway, this is Linda Carbonell.
It went way too quick.
Huh? Yeah, it did go too quick, I know. But that's okay. That's why we get another date, see? But anyway, this is Linda Carbonell and Paul Goldman. Right, Paul? We are saying goodbye for Walking Through Life today, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Walking through this life of mine, well, it's teaching me so many things, like how to love and how to lose and how to choose.